You're listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast brought to you by DraftKings. Great deal going on right now. You throw down $5 on an NBA game, and if that team hits, you get $150 in free plays. It's that simple. It's that easy. Hop on DraftKings Sportsbook app. All right, we already got a ton of comments here. It looks like we've got about 20 comments, so get them going. Again, joined by John Schuster. I'm Mike Luke. Arizona falls tonight by, what was the final score, Shu?
I think it was 77-73.
Okay. And you and I talked right before we came on here, and there's bad officiating, and then there's bad officiating. This was a game where you know that you're going to get some kind of home cooking. Obviously, that happens. Well, Arizona fans and McHale certainly know that. But this was a game where the referees injected themselves into the game. And we're going to talk about all of that. But Schuster, and you mentioned it on the phone, the technical foul on Kerr Kriisa, I think was the epitome of something like that, where it's like you're trying to make yourself part of the game instead of letting these guys play.
Yeah, you're not the game. The game is about you in a position where you control what's going on. And that was an instance where I think the official lost control in a game where officiating was poor. These games frustrate me, though, and not just frustrate me from a viewing standpoint, but they give you an excuse to bitch about officiating when there's a lot of other stuff that you can bitch about when it comes to, the way that your basketball team performed. And hopefully throughout the course of this, we'll be able to navigate a lot of this. In many ways, obviously a frustrating game for Arizona where they just couldn't quite get over the hump. But even with so many things against them, the fact that they had a chance to win this game against a legitimately good basketball team that did everything it could to take it to them, I think provides a measure of optimism, a significant measure of optimism, frankly, for the Wildcats as they continue to move forward. We knew this was going to be a tough stretch. We knew this was going to be a difficult game, and there was a portion early on where Arizona looked like it was going to get its doors blown off. And then once they stabilized a little bit, their defense went a long way toward giving them an opportunity to fight their way back into it. And the fact that those things happened, even with as much frustration that occurred tonight, Koloko in foul trouble and not playing tough or particularly well. Ballo kind of being overwhelmed on the inside. Kriisa being inconsistent and making some really questionable decisions at time. One, I think, was key to Arizona's last gasp opportunity to get into the game.
The three-pointer in transition. Yeah.
Terrible three-pointer in a situation where they had Tennessee kind of off balance there. And if he pulls it back just a little bit, this was the possession before was the only good play that Tubelis had in the entire game. And maybe he had an opportunity to go to some sort of matchup like that before. There were a lot of frustrations in this matchup. And unfortunately, we're going to spend, I think, a lot of time talking about how the officiating was bad when there are learning opportunities here for how teams are going to attack Arizona and what Arizona has to do a little bit better to toughen up. The Cats
let's talk. Go ahead, Shu.
Kind of the that's one of the weird things about this game. Somehow, despite all of that, and I'm not going to argue that the officiating was bad. Officiating was bad. Despite poor officiating and officiating in calls that often went against Arizona in really questionable times. Despite Koloko's poor performance, despite Mathurin fouling out, despite Kriisa making bad decisions and Tubelis being non-existent in this matchup, Arizona has somehow had to win.
Well, and that's the crazy part about this, Shu, is that Arizona, and I was just texting a little bit with our buddy Matty M, and our Arizona has a margin for error that is absolutely insane. keep in mind, Tennessee's a good team. I think if Arizona plays them in a neutral court, they win by 15 points. But Tennessee's a good team. You can tell they're well coached. Rick Barnes is a good coach. But look at everything that Arizona did. First of all, you turn the ball over 10 times in the first 8 minutes. And, and a lot of those were, as the kids like to say, pick six type turnovers where, they're a turnover that goes right back for a layup. So you have that. You have a game where you're arguably your best. Well, Ben Mathurin's your best player. I'm not going to even make that point.
And he was outstanding. He kept them in. He single-handedly kept Arizona in this.
Yes. Tubelis, though, you look at a guy like Azuolas Tubelis, he's your second best player, and he doesn't even score until the very end of the game. And Christian Coloco, who we're going to get to a little bit coming up here, because I think there's something that I've noticed a little bit about him. Kerr Kriisa, not a great game. Really, the only guy that brings it is Ben Mathurin. And Arizona is still tied with 2 minutes left in this game in an environment, too, where you're absolutely getting hosed by the officials. And so I look at this and I think, man, this team's really got a margin for error that is, even in a loss, is remarkable to be able to look at there, Schuster.
Yeah, Arizona may not win the national title, but they're going to go out swinging. And they're obviously a tough team to deal with. This was one of those games where you almost pack it in after 10 minutes, say it's not our night. We're down 14, crowd's against us. Everything's just not going well. The other team is punching the crap out of us. And, it becomes a 15-point game, 20-point game. Maybe you cut it to 10 here and there, and that's pretty much it. You're at arm's length the whole way. But the Cats kept fighting, and even in the last 5 minutes, as things were somehow getting close, you had this weird feeling that, man, Arizona might actually pull this thing out somehow. And really the somehow was unusual in this matchup. It's a game they didn't deserve to win, yet somehow, again, hung around and gave themselves a chance. Mike, you're absolutely right. In a weird way, if you separate yourself a little bit from this, and there are obviously some issues that need to be addressed, Arizona losing once again. You want to talk about the reincarnation of Lute Olson? Here we go. Right. Arizona losing the game before Christmas again. So if Wildcat fans are out there and they like the idea of Tommy Lloyd maybe Lute 2.0, well, here's another example of it for you. So maybe you'll feel good about where that ultimately goes as well. But in the here and now, the Cats, despite a lot of things working against them, figured out a way to stay in this game. And really, for the most part, defensively, I think played pretty well over the course of the last 30 minutes. One of the things that I'd mentioned, Mike, if I was going to point to two differences individually, the Fulkerson-Tubelis difference is the one that is the most glaring in this game. Because Barnes at the, down the stretch has basically tried to approach the matchup the same way that Illinois tried to approach it with Coburn, one-on-one, single, try to see if you can get some stuff done. Fulkerson was much more adept at getting enough done against Arizona with that approach as opposed to Illinois, and that was a difference in the game. On the other side, Tubelis looked slow.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. So we've got 64 comments already. So let's try to
you're right. Try to get to them. I don't.
The thing that we really like on here is that, unlike some people, we welcome your interaction. You're what makes this go. Abraham Mendoza, quick story. I've refereed Abraham's games Sundays for about 7 or 8 years. Nicest guy in the world, but doesn't think I'm a good official. So when I was complaining about the officiating, he gave me a remark here. The defensive pressure, but be that as it may, Abe says the defensive pressure on the guards made them flustered. Do you agree? Early on, 100%. This team, and I missed the first 5 minutes of the game. I was dealing with a couple family things, but
Mike, it's okay. Arizona missed the first 5 minutes of this game too.
No joke. So I'm watching it. I'm pulling a Kevin Woodman, and I'm watching in the first 5 minutes at halftime, and Arizona was not ready for that physicality. They were not ready for that tenaciousness. And honestly, you could totally see it right there. I mean, I felt like 3 or 4 times between Dalen Terry and Kerr Kriisa that Tennessee just ripped the ball out of the Arizona guards' hands. And when you're in an environment like that, and again, it's a learning experience, that can't happen, because that was what was mainly attributable to being down 16-2 when it felt like 30 seconds into the game.
I think this is a great lesson game, though. And Arizona learned its lesson in the first 10 minutes. These are the types of teams. And again, one of the things we've discussed here, and by the way, I completely agree with what Abraham said there. One of the things that I think has become interesting is that throughout the course of the first couple months, we've talked about teams that are going to be potential problems for Arizona. What we've learned is that many of those teams are good. And that's a good thing.
So good teams could pose a problem?
Yes. The addition to that, on the other end, is that Arizona is a good team who can pose problems for other good teams, which is an area that I don't know going into the season that we expected. So Arizona's place among the better teams in the country, I don't think got disturbed in this match at all. But in the first 10 minutes of this game, Arizona got to learn what some teams that have this kind of physical capability are going to do against them. They're going to get up into them. They're going to utilize athleticism. They're going to swipe at the ball. They're going to try to be physical, and they're going to try to cause disruption in the backcourt. And frankly, in the early stages, Tennessee was phenomenal at doing that across the board. This is the difference between playing against good defensive teams and defensive teams that Arizona has played on its schedule so far. Sometimes, Mike, you've talked about this, basketball doesn't always have to be hard. But
no. You brought that up,
easy. But sometimes it isn't going to be easy. And that was the lesson that hopefully Arizona learned tonight. That from the first tip to the end of the matchup, you've got to be tougher than the opposition. And for the first 10 minutes, Arizona wasn't. As this game moved along, margin for error kind of worked in Arizona's favor, and they still found ways to make this a heck of a lot closer than it probably should have been.
Anthony Humbert, I think, hit the nail on the head. And again, guys, we're at 79 remarks here, so we're going to try to get as many as we can. Really appreciate all of you. Anthony Humbert says, this team is as talented as any one in the nation, and I would still put them in the national championship discussion without question. I 100% agree with that. I got Duke on in the background right now, and Duke is a team that is obviously going to be there. Duke, to me, is one of those 5 teams. To me, right now, there's 5 teams that are kind of a little bit above everybody else, maybe 6 if you want to include Kansas. And that's Baylor, that's UCLA, that's your Gonzaga Bulldogs, that's Duke, that's Arizona, and maybe Kansas. Those are the teams that I think are kind of in that little – they're kind of that core 6 or – Fab 5, whatever you want to call them. But Arizona, to me, is squarely in that discussion. And there was nothing out there that indicated to me that Arizona won't be there at the end because, again, you won't face that kind of officiating. Well, I mean, I guess you might. But you won't face that kind of a home cooking generally in an NCAA tournament game with a non-biased crew that's not going to be affected by officiating in a hostile environment like that was.
I'm not entirely sure about how next week's schedule shakes down. I've heard some rumors, take these for what it's worth, we're still a week out, that UCLA is seriously talking about maybe not playing games for a while.
Right.
I don't know how truthful that is, but I've heard that rumbling. But anyway, the game that really intrigues me if it happens, based on what we saw tonight, is USC. Because USC's defense is excellent. And this is a Tennessee team that in the early stages of this matchup imposed its will. And you could argue throughout key points of this game did the same against Arizona. Lots of loose balls that Arizona didn't get that Tennessee did. USC, I think, is that kind of team too. And I'm curious to see over the course of the next week whether Arizona maybe learns some lessons as a result of this game and figures out a way to perform when baskets don't come easy. And this was one of those matchups where they had to grind for a lot of opportunities. And I think in the end, as frustrating as this is, and obviously you don't want to lose for a variety of reasons, you can come up with a lot of reasons as to why that is. There are things to be taken out of this game that make you feel good and give you potential for Arizona long term. Good to see you, Robbie. Thanks for joining us as always.
Yes, Robbie, we really appreciate you. Robbie, been a long-time listener, even when I was back at 1290. Always appreciate you. And she said she's referring to our guy, Scott Schlittenhart, and she said, Scott, just like when we played Duke in the Lute era, we'd get momentum, refs would call a foul. It certainly felt like that. And again, Arizona isn't without blame here because Arizona did some really dumb things out there. Obviously, to start off the game, there were the Kerr Kriisa shot. And again, I like Kerr Kriisa, and I'm generally the guy that's okay with guys taking shots that are if you're a shooter and you're a clutch type guy, which I think he is, I generally am going to kind of give you some leeway there. That last shot, though, you better be Salim Stoudemire if you're shooting that shot, because I can get that shot at absolutely any time, and I've already shown that I can score effectively in the half court setting with my squad. That one to me was a shot that was really, I don't want to say a backbreaker, but that was, I thought, your one opportunity in the game to take the lead there. And if you take the lead, who knows exactly what you get.
That's right. You things start to feel a little bit different. I believe that was a 5-point swing, and it was enough to where Tennessee could sort of milk clock and get enough to hold on. Yeah, and I like that Arizona's a free-flowing team. I like that they let it go. I like that Lloyd plays to his talent and lets his talent make decisions, but sometimes those decisions are bad, and Kerr made a bad decision there. Simple as that. There were all kinds of opportunities, especially with the Vols on their heels, where they could have gotten a much better look and been given an opportunity. One of the things that I thought was, in a possession like that too, the refs were calling a lot. They're blowing the whistles a lot. So if you go on the inside, there may be an opportunity where you can draw another foul, get a bucket, or maybe make something happen that allows you to get a much better look than you ultimately did. I get the excitement of the moment. I get that Kerr's a big-time player who in 2 key games now has been much better in the second half than he was in the first. But that was not a good decision, and I suspect that Lloyd will explain to him why that was not a good decision.
You know what is a good decision, though? The DraftKings Sportsbook app. Code word PHNX. You throw down, great deal going on, you throw down $5 on an NBA game, and if your team hits, you get $150 in free plays. It's that simple. It's that easy. If John Schuster can do it, that means that I can do it. And it's really that simple. Bruno's had a long day. He's resting behind me, and Bruno can't do it, but if Bruno was a human, he 100% could. Now remember, eligibility restrictions do apply. Arizona only, 21 and up. If you've got a gambling issue, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. They'll get you taken care of. Again, the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX. All right, let's get to some of these comments here. And this is something that I think we need to talk about, because I always want to be careful about, bagging on a kid, for lack of a better term, especially one that's coming off injury. But I think at this stage in the game, Pelle Larsson was hyped as being one of the better players on this roster coming into the season. And who knows, maybe it's because of injury. Who knows, maybe it's because he won't necessarily, whatever the case may be. Right now, he's just not that guy. When he's in the game, he looks slow. He can make a few nice passes, but he looks tentative out there. And I never really feel comfortable when he has the ball at all. And this was a guy that I think a lot of people were looking at as possibly being a top 3 to 4 player on this team. And I think that right now that's a long ways off there, John Schuster.
Well, let's see if that plays off. I think Boog is right with his take, and you are as well. Things have been difficult for Larson up to portions of this stage. And you're right. The game does appear fast for him at this point, but there's obviously some skill set there. And hopefully as this thing, works itself through, maybe he can see the improvement that Wildcat fans need for him to see. But it does appear that he's overwhelmed with athleticism across from him right now. And maybe he's, there's a slowness factor or a mental factor or something that he's just trying to figure out what it is that he's trying to accomplish. And sometimes if you think too much, you've already lost the play.
Yeah, exactly.
And so maybe he's at that stage right now. And if that's it, hopefully he can improve. But it has
Schuster,
been. Yes, sir.
I've always maintained that you're one of the smartest people that I know, and that you have an ability to be able to decipher and certainly write in a capacity which I would kill you for, to be able to take that ability from you. But, but you do have a unique ability right here. We're about to really test that. What do you think about this comment right here?
Boy, that is, I'll tell you what, that is as well written as I can possibly break it down. You don't need any more letters than that. Those letters, you can try to be as flowery as you ultimately want to. Sometimes you don't need to be flowery. Be concise, get to the point, say what it is you're going to say. And if you come up with the right combination of letters, consonants, and vowels,
sometimes you can't even get to it.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. All right, let's go. Scott Schlittenhart said Let's see. Let me let me find out up here, and if I can't, then I'll let them. Marcus Price, the dynamic duo right there. Marcus, I'm wearing your shirt, by the way. My train is on schedule.
Man, look at that.
Yeah,
look at that.
We're always pushing here. Scott
Schlittenhardt, the sweet promo there. Nicely done.
Yeah. Scott Schlittenhardt, though, he asked me, but you know what? If you ask me, you're asking John Schuster as well. It's that simple.
Sorry, Scott.
Scott Schlittenhardt said, Mike, where do you think Arizona ends up in the next rankings? To me, they're certainly going to fall a little bit, but I'm not dropping Arizona out of the top 10 with this loss. I'm sorry. I'm just not. Now, if you watch the game, and I think it's fair to say at this point, Schuster, Arizona is a top 10 team in the nation. They just are by any measurement. So if you drop them to like 13, or you try to pull a Seth Davis and put him at 21, come on, dude, you're trying way too hard. I don't know. If it's up to me, first of all, I would have probably had him higher than 6. I would have probably had him at about 4, but whatever. But I would put Arizona at 8.
Yeah, I think that's about the number that had popped into my head too. And again, we're with all the weirdness going on and cancellations and postponements and changes in time and all the rest of it. We may have 17 top 5 teams that don't play games over the course of the next 4 or 5 days. So who knows what who knows what that's going to look like. A lot of teams are not going to win in Tennessee. This is a big game for them. Came out very spirited early on, and Arizona managed to stay in it. There are 2 things to this. I think your number of 8, all things being equal, assuming everybody else manages to play, is probably about right. Beyond that, I don't really care. I think if Arizona just keeps taking care of its own business, the rest of that will take care of itself. And once we get into mid-February and into mid-March, when hopefully we're trying to break down tournament seeds, Arizona's going to have a very favorable one that gives itself an opportunity to make a deep tournament run.
Oh yeah, no, I would second that entirely. All right, let's see here. We talked about Pella Larson right there. All right, the UCLA USC road trip. Now, John Schuster is a guy that when he does know some things, he generally keeps them close to the vest. So I don't know if Schuster had any inside info or not about the UCLA situation, but I'm going to say this. I really hope that Arizona is able to play a full strength UCLA and USC team, because you're not going to get a lot of opportunities. Well, let's be honest here. You're not getting any more opportunities to play awesome national championship level teams. I want to see Arizona absolutely tested in those games. So if they have to cancel that game, if I'm Arizona, I 100% want to make that one up. Because, again, if it's Washington State or Oregon State, whatever, but UCLA to me is really a way to kind of cut your teeth against a team that could easily cut down the nets. And USC is very much the same way. They're not as good, but USC is damn good as well there, Schuster.
Oh, absolutely. And you wanted Arizona to be tested on this stretch. And again, everything's fluid right now. What I'm hearing and the legitimacy of that could change 15 minutes from now. So let's see how things play out. But I've heard there have been discussions. Again, there are probably discussions across the country in a lot of different ways. Let's hope that UCLA is available at full strength to play basketball games next week, and that USC is also available, because that will be a great road swing if it happens. And it's the type of test that Arizona needs. And we'll see how Arizona answers. Difficult places to play, although I think Wildcat fans are going to be well represented in both venues. But we'll ultimately see how it plays out. And like you, Mike, we want to be tested as much as possible and have those kinds of games that take place there. And so if Arizona gets an opportunity, then it's good for the team. It's good for the fans to watch those kinds of games. And it makes Arizona hopefully a better team as this season moves along.
All right. We always get somebody that asks about Bruno and how Bruno's doing. This is Bruno currently right now, if you can see him. He's taking it very easy.
He looks fairly comfortable. Yes.
He looks very comfortable because he's thinking about John Schuster's voice right now. So naturally, that's putting him to sleep.
Absolutely.
Zing!
I am. It's not the Calm app. It's the Shoe app, but it has the very same effect.
It is the Shoe app. All right. I want to talk a little bit about Christian Coloco on the other side, but as always, DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX. Throw down $5 on an NBA game, and if either team scores, or excuse me, if whichever team wins, if you pick that team, you get $150 in free plays. That would be a heck of a one right there, betting on an NBA game just for somebody to score. But if there was one that would put that down, it would be the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX. Check it out. They got you all taken care of. All right, Schuster. So I want to talk a little bit about Christian Coloco now. That's been your guy from day one. And you know what? And you're right. I was wrong. The one thing, though, that I have noticed a little bit, and again, this is kind of picking nits a little bit, but when the game, this is the second time, well, there's been a couple games, but against Illinois and against Tennessee, especially offensively, he looked a little out of his element. The game looked a little too fast for him at that point. Am I just looking at something through my Mike Luke colored glasses, or is there something that maybe, you know what, he's still having to adjust to that higher caliber play?
I think maybe the better question, the latter aspect of that is the better question. Why is it that the game seems to be quick, and is he regressing a little bit on the offensive end? And if that's the case, what does he have to do to get a little bit more comfortable? Maybe teams are defending him a little bit better, but you're absolutely right. And there are ebbs and flows in sports. You have, and I think Arizona in the Tommy Lloyd era might go through a little ebb and flow here as well, because they were such a mystery. And then they jumped on the scene pretty quickly. Now teams have had an opportunity to look at them a little bit. And there are a lot of other good coaches out there who game plan and scheme to try to figure out what weaknesses are. So then once that happens, Arizona has to figure out how to adjust accordingly to try to handle the way that teams are going to go after them. Individuals go through much of the same thing, and it seems that Coloco is maybe going through one of those moments right now. His rise out of the gate was meteoric. Came out of nowhere. It's like, whoa, this guy's really put it together, and now, you know, maybe he's been figured out a little bit, and teams are defending him differently, and it's been frustrating for him in a way that it was frustrating for him ever since he's been on the U of A campus. So now it's up to him to try to figure out what it is he needs to do to get back into the offensive flow.
What's exciting, though, about this squad, well, there's a lot of things that are exciting, but Arizona does have a guy that will have the ball at the end of the game. And Bennedict Mathurin is the guy that it seems that they've kind of zeroed in on, that, you know what, when you need, I mean, how many times in this game right here when Arizona was down, when it felt like they were down 13, it was about to hit 16, he would hit that three or the step back that would get him from 10 to 7 or 11 to 8. He has really developed into that guy. And he looks to me like a guy that's going to be a first team All-American type player. And if he's not, he's going to certainly be in that discussion there, John Schuster.
Yeah, it's hard to argue that. There were what we go through 30 minutes in that game where he had scored half of Arizona's points.
Right.
You know, and there were two different occasions where that had happened. I think he had 14 of their 21 at the half, and I think even 10 minutes into the second half, Arizona was in the mid 40s and he had into the mid 20s. So he was the guy who was, from an offensive standpoint, keeping Arizona around. That's a really helpful thing. You have a player like that when everything else isn't going your way that can make a difference. That's good. And then the other players hopefully can pick up on their complementary roles and give Arizona the balance that it ultimately needs. But it's extraordinarily helpful to have someone like Mathurin on the roster and someone as good as him who can play as well as he can in those clutch situations.
All right, my guy Boog, aka Safeway Bob. That would be his street name right there. Has Arizona overachieved through 12 games? Fan bias aside, you know, it's a good question. If you know what, I'm going to say.
You want me to help you with this one?
Sure.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead, Mike.
No, I'm going to say. You know what? Before the season, I would have said yes. Right now, I'm going to say no, and here's why. There's a lot of talent on this roster, and Tommy Lloyd was the perfect one to be able to squeeze all that talent out of this roster. So, yes, before the season, I would have said yes. But you know what? After seeing the talent, after seeing how Tommy Lloyd can coach, I think they should be in about this situation.
This team is unquestionably overachieved. and maybe they'll continue to over.
Here, let me show you that picture of Bruno again.
Yeah. Please keep doing that. Please keep doing that face. I thought that face was that's a you know one of the things that I noticed, and you can tell when things are going well on a production. All of a sudden, you had some sort of new intro. You were featured talking,
Oh,
smiling.
how about that? That's really
okay. This is like you just got renewed on network TV or something like that. So I hope they do more of those intros like that. And the face that you just had will be one of the ones that they pull out. That would be excellent to see on a much more consistent basis. Arizona's absolutely overachieved. And one of the things that I think is probably surprising you here is how good their defense is. They have adapted very nicely to what it is that Tommy Lloyd wants to do on the offensive end. The surprise is how generally consistent they've been defensively. Even in the half court, more often than not, they play good defense. It's not easy to score consistently against Arizona. And that's a part that perhaps surprised me a little bit. I think a lot of teams in the country look at Arizona and think they're kind of soft. And in the first 10 minutes of this game, Arizona was. But Arizona toughened up a lot and gave themselves, as a result, an opportunity. If you keep giving up buckets and you can't get stops, then you're not going to be able to string enough together to get back into a game when you're down by 12 or down by 15 or whatever it was that Arizona was down in the first 10 minutes. But Arizona fought all the way back in this matchup, and you have to be able to do that on the defensive end. And that indicates a toughness that, I don't know that I really expected from this squad on a consistent basis. I think they have absolutely overachieved. I don't think any of us should be the least bit surprised that Arizona lost a game on the road in a hostile environment against a top 20 basketball team. That's going to happen to most basketball teams. Arizona somehow was in this game, and that I think bodes well as we head into 22.
You know what also bodes well? Going on to the Go PHNX website, the AZ Wildcats podcast. We got you all covered there. As always, very appreciative to everyone out there. You guys are the ones that make this show. Anthony Humbert, I think, put it really well when he says, Merry Christmas. Talk to you all after UCLA, off to watch the Hawkeye final. I am not off to watch the Hawkeye final, but at the end of the day, though, we do appreciate everybody on here. Your involvement is really kind of what makes this whole thing go. But for John Schuster, I am Mike Luke. You all have a very Merry Christmas, and we will be back with you hopefully in about a week or so. Schuster, as always, appreciate you, my man.
Have a good holiday, man.
All right. Talk to you all soon.